Gina and Dr. Amelia, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Hello.
Yeah. Well, just in talking with you before we started, I feel a connection to you both. I just like a little spark of, wow, these two are up to something really powerful, really
I love
powerful.
that.
And I actually got chills just even saying that because, as you both know, this is a topic quite close to my heart. It's not something that I am out there talking about, but there was a time that I was when I was less resourced, I would say, much less resourced after
Mhm.
the passing of my sister and the aftermath of that. And we'll get
Mhm.
into that.
Mhm.
But I love the blend we have here of the lived experience with the professional experience. And Amelia, I'm sure you have some lived experience as well. And we'll get into both of your stories. We'll start with your story, Gina, because I think that, oh, and by the way, I need to say that your book just came in the mail to you.
Yes. Oh, yes. I should. Can I show?
Yeah,
By
yeah,
the
yeah.
time,
So
by the time
I know, I
everyone
haven't
sees it,
even
it'll be
seen it
out.
yet.
literally, Gina hasn't seen
Ooh.
it. This is a book you both co-authored. Do you want to say the name of it, the title?
Surviving suicidal ideation from therapy to spirituality and the lived experience. And I was telling Gina the serendipity that an article in here I reference was co-authored and actually went up for the Pulitzer this year by my client. And my client, who was the co-author, happened to be in the room when I opened the box of books. He gave me permission to use part of his time
Wow.
doing that. So it's very special. I can't
Oh,
wait for Gina to get hers.
yeah. I
Oh
think
my
she's
God.
getting serious FOMO with not having it in her
I'm
hand.
so FOMO. And just so you know, I did 30 illustrations in it. So, and it's
Yes,
all channeled healing artwork from my guides.
including the cover.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I was flipping. I have a PDF version. I'm not going to distribute it. Don't worry. But but it's beautiful, beautiful artwork. And let's get into it. So, Gina, tell us a little bit about how this path found you. I know you were very young when this started, so maybe take us through that genesis from your youth into kind of your awakening point.
Yeah, when you're a child, you don't understand why you're here, what your whole purpose is. Everything is just like a awakening flower, and it is so beautiful. And then when you happen to get into situations where you're unsafe and things come over you, like childhood abuse and alcoholism, which was in my story, you just don't really comprehend it, and you create these unhealthy patterns and boundaries and fears and all this stuff that kind of I always can explain it as like a layered cake on top of another. And as you grow up into a teen, and if you don't start to get some help, some support, either through family members or clinicians or whatever, that just continues into your adult life. And when you're younger, you kind of need those survival skills to stay alive, actually, which was
Right.
in my case. But when you get older, those skills actually in adult relationships are not good because
Mm.
they're fear-based and they bring in more toxic people. You are so unworthy of yourself because you think that is all that you deserve, that you welcome in low-level relationships that are, again, abusive. And so what happens is you start to disconnect because you don't know how to fix it. You start to go numb. You start to feel like you don't belong here. You feel like you're a failure, like, nothing is connecting the dots. And you go into a big dark hole, and the world just seems so overpowering and unbelievable. And when you follow into that hole, that's when you start to lose people, I believe, in my opinion, because they're down there. They can't feel anything. They're numb. We kind of need to take the bootstraps, and that's the book that Dr. Kelley and I created, and pull them gently back up with care and love and kindness and understanding.
Yeah.
And I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm tired of feeling this way because I'm scared to do the thing that I'm thinking about doing. That I would actually visualize what I was thinking and how people finding me and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I don't want to leave that on in this world. So I guess I have to figure this out. I
Mm.
guess I have to. And then I just went down a path, and I think everybody has a different tool set that resonates with them. And why we created this book that has a lot of different techniques. We don't know which one's going to resonate with you. You're the only one that's going to know which path speaks to you. So whatever that is, find it.
I guess the initial message, and just maybe we just instill hope and infuse that in the beginning point here, is that don't ever give up. Like you
No,
will find something or it will find you.
Mhm.
absolutely. And through this journey, I found things that worked for me. And it was about 15 years. And so I recognize it takes a long time, but we're hoping that with this book, we can really condense that for someone, not to overload them or scare them, that within like 90 days, you're going to start to feel better. Because with intellect, for me, I felt like I understood what was happening to me instead of going into the motions of it all and to the negative of stereo that would play in my mind. I had this context now. Oh, I'm in this stage. And we outline all this in the book graciously with Dr. Kelley's, brilliant understanding of how the mind works, which I cannot do. But with that intellect, I'm like, oh, I'm in stage 3. That's a little bit scary, but how can I get to 2? How can I get to 1? Okay, I'm going to put on music. I'm going to go out and take a boxing class. I'm going to create a safety plan, and you're the only one that's with you 24/7. So it's really the individual healing, unfortunately, is a solo sport in a way at the core, but then you build everything around you. Say, I need that, I need that, and I need that. And you just take charge and you will see what happened for me. The pivotal moment, what happened to me is I started to love myself, which I did not know I didn't do. I loved everyone else around me.
Yeah.
Oh, what can I do for that person, that job, that client? Can I get someone that job constantly? Because I was trying to fill that wound in me that needed to feel loved. So I thought if I loved everyone else and gave them all of my heart and soul, that I would get it back. And then when I didn't, I felt worse. So this whole path took me on, no. Gina comes first. I love me first, and then I can love everyone else. And that's when my life changed. That's when my life purpose came in. That's when my tribe came in, people like Dr. Kelley, because you attract like energy brings like energy. So if I'm in the pit and I'm thinking all I deserve is someone who's going to abuse me, I can't attract the job I want, the love I want, the friends I want, because I'm not vibrating on that level. I'm carrying around a bunch of wounds and people can see it and they're like, oh, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was too much for other people and that they would get triggered. And now that I'm walking in that, and definitely that we want to share that I have the lived and healed experience. For me, spirituality was a big, big, big one.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because you'd mentioned that there was a moment in time that you could probably, put the needle down on the record and say it was this moment that you had a very profound spiritual type of awakening. Are you willing to share parts of that?
Well, I want to bring this back to Dr. Kelley because I don't think she knows this. And I love this about spirit. Spirit has a plan years and years and years. I mean, always. To me, the way I explain it is it's like a big giant matrix with synapses connecting the dots for us constantly and moving, right? And we just have to find the right energy, but we're getting constant signs from our guides in the universe. About 20 years ago, when I was really depressed, I started getting tattoos just because I was so numb. I wanted to feel some kind of pain. I didn't know what I wanted, but I had this brilliant artist and I saw a picture of Amelia Earhart. So I said, put that on.
Weird.
Wow.
Put that on my arm. Amelia Earhart. Amelia, she's strong. She's going to give me strength. And he put it on.
That's cool.
That is very cool.
Amelia's such a unique name, honestly. It's not something you hear every day.
Well, and funnily enough, I never told you this. I was named after the Joni Mitchell song Amelia that was based off of Amelia Earhart.
No.
Yeah. So it wasn't just a let's pick a name because I was named Amelia back when it wasn't like in vogue. Right now.
I remember Amelia Bedelia books. Okay, we're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And that was 20 years ago.
So synchronous.
I was in a suicidal episode getting a tattoo because I wanted to feel something. This realization only came to me probably about 6 months ago because I had it lasered off because I got tired of I don't even know why I put that on there. When I started getting healed, I started lasering off my tattoos because they didn't represent me anymore. And I was like, I don't want to see this anymore, but it hit me the minute I was getting it lasered off. Amelia, that's why.
I can send you a portrait of myself if you want to put a new one on.
Maybe a neck tattoo with Amelia's face.
But it really said to me that spirit was along with me this whole ride. And that at one point I was going to manifest the person that was going to help me birth into the world something so important with the baseline of saving lives. Right now, our goal is to reduce those numbers any way we can. We have to do it ASAP with everyone involved. And we want to bring levity to the subject. Yes, it's a doom and gloom subject.
Yeah. And we are being a little light here. And I've told my sister stories so many times that I can put it on a shelf somewhere in my psyche and not overly emote. But we do recognize it is a sensitive topic. We're not being insensitive. We're all three highly sensitive persons. We've established that. But there's something to, yes, like you said, keeping it light. So when you were like 20 years ago, let's go back to that. There was a tattoo and
well, it's bringing me back to today, because what I'm saying is that this book was supposed to be born. It was supposed to be created with Dr. Kelley, and I had to do the work to get to this book. Who knew if it was 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? But Spirit is always with us. That was my sign saying, we always knew that you would make it through this. And we always knew that you would birth something so great into the world that would help other people through your hardship and story. And that's why I think it's important, because now when I look at either my past pain, and when I still go through pain, I still cry, I still have breakups, I still have job losses, I still have things I have to deal with.
sure.
I go through the motion completely different. I don't abuse myself. I don't talk negatively against myself. I take a breath if I need to take a breath. I go to do yoga. I realize that my mental health is the most important thing. And that Spirit was always with me. And yes, I did have a spontaneous sort of like awakening download once I got healed, that birthed in my company, the Liberated Healer. It was a transformational day. I mean, I didn't sleep that night. I wrote the whole mission statement out. And I said, I'm doing this. And I started to build this. I started to see an entire ecosystem of apps, programs, solutions, groups, resources. And now I just need like $300 million to get it
Is
all
that
done.
all?
But
You
it's
know,
out
but
there.
like we're talking about like the frequency match really of like what we attract into our space is it's not always what we want. It's what our soul needs in terms of like a relationship or a tool or whatever. That when we're carrying those lower density emotions that we don't have the skill set or even the awareness of how to, alchemize them or release them, it can bring us into a real hopeless state where it doesn't feel like life is worth living anymore. So I think it's so powerful that you were able to keep yourself grounded and here. Because I know this started for you when you were a child. You said you have some remembrances of being 8 years old and having some suicidal thoughts. And I mentioned to you both that this is really alive in my family of origin, both on my mother's and father's sides. And it's been interesting to like be on this journey of trying to understand mental health. It's just getting more and more complex. It feels like not necessarily mental health issues, although it could be, but our environment that we're trying to all survive, literally this environment. Gina, any awareness of that place of hopelessness that you want to share? Like sometimes people just go into apathy. They don't care. They don't want to reach for a tool or, they lack that even caring because they've gotten so low that it just feels hopeless. How would you, and I'll give you, Amelia, the opportunity to speak to that as well, but what would you say to that person, Gina, who might be in the thick of that?
You have to go back to self-love, and you have to see that all life wants, the purpose of life is to live, is to grow. Even a seed, an oak tree seed, it looks for the light. It looks for the rich soil. It looks for the water. We have to go back to that. As we become more modern, we become and gotten more technology, more money, more medicine, we become more depressed because we're separate from who we are and our being and our nature. We have to realize that our purpose is actually to live and to survive and to survive well. And that all these things that have happened to us have not happened to us, have happened for us, even the bad things. And when you start to look at it that way, and you start to look at it as almost a learning, oh yeah, no wonder I brought in the same person, the same storyline over and over again, not recognizing that I needed to heal that wound and things like that. So that's just the bottom line kind of is, we're here to learn and grow and to live. And so that's why we're creating these kind of resources and guides to support you through that. Recognizing it's hard, but tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another. When I was in the thick of it, I was just like, just get through today. And then tomorrow, just get through today.
Yeah.
And repeat until you can feel a little bit better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Kelley, what would you say to that person who is really in a place of utter despair, hopelessness? They feel like they've tried everything. They feel like they're losing the sense of meaning that Gina's referencing. Where would you start?
The first thing I would start with, well, in honesty, is relationship with them, letting them know if you don't have that visceral experience of hope right now, I will hold that for you. So I do let my clients know that I will perpetually hope for you. So I think sometimes knowing that there's someone having that experience for you can be really powerful. That ability, especially if you've come from trauma or a low vibration energy, as you were both discussing, to know that someone somewhere is holding that space for you is powerful. Beyond that, one of the things that I think is so important, and I think our readers who pick up this book will see that in my style of writing, is I am big into psychoeducation. I think the more you know, the better. Like, I want my client to walk away so self empowered with knowledge that they don't, not that they don't need me. I mean, the relationship sustains therapy, honestly, I think more than sometimes the skills. But that they feel that they know what is happening when it's happening. So I think the feeling of despair and hopelessness and lack of motivation can feel like an abyss that you can't crawl out of if you don't understand its impermanence and you don't understand that clinically it is a symptom. And what we're talking about is anhedonia. So the lack of feeling anything, the lack of excitement or engagement.
I think
And
the
I
opposite word of that is anandamide, which is bliss.
There we go. I did not know that, and I'm gonna go Google that later.
Yeah, it's a Sanskrit term.
Oh, that's awesome. So all these serendipitous things crossing paths today. I love it. And so when someone understands, oh, that's what this is a very common symptom of all of these things. Now we're like, okay, what do I do with that? I lean heavily with people choosing actions despite feeling the way they feel. And what I mean by that is you don't have to want to do anything. It's, have you made a commitment, whether it's to yourself through like a safety plan or to a support person or to your pet or to your child or to a greater cause outside yourself that maybe you felt disconnected from that you care about, whatever it is, whoever it is. If you can make a commitment to do something, anything, because we know that this is a day at a time, not because you feel excited to do it, not because you even think it's going to work, but because you've made that commitment piece. And I think that's why we address commitment very early on in the journey in this book, because we know people are going to be picking this up and feeling hopeless, feeling the despair, and feeling like, gosh, I have tried everything. One more book, one more thing, really? And so I think it's that piece, like understanding that I've got this, even if in this moment it doesn't feel good yet.
Yet is the qualifier, right? It's just,
Mhm.
it is hard, when you're in the throes of it. I've entered deep depression in my life and it is scary. It is
Yeah.
destabilizing. You
Mhm.
kind of like, in my instance, it was kind of on the heels of a spiritual awakening too, which can often
Mm.
mimic the signs of depression, even
Mhm.
psychosis. But all my anchors, all my familiar tools and resources, they just weren't working. And to try to summon within me the strength and the bravery, really, I kept thinking of that phrase, like 8 seconds of courage or whatever that phrase is. Not that I had a plan, but it's so interesting to me. After my sister took her life 19 years ago now, I had people coming out of the woodwork, people that I
Mhm.
would have never in a million years thought that they
Mhm.
were suffering with suicidal ideation. Other
Mm.
mothers, professionals, people in clergy type positions. I mean, it was just staggering to me. And I think I mentioned to you both at the time of my sister's passing, I was Mrs. Utah. And so it kind of got some media attention, and the Utah Attorney General asked me to sit on the State Suicide Prevention Council. So I kind of would sit in these think tank meetings with like professionals and academics and people in the psychology professions all the way down to like school teachers. And I would just be sitting on my hands and so frustrated because they've had some blinders on with some things. And I think you spoke to it, Gina. It was the spiritual aspect that was not really being addressed in terms of that holistic healing model, or the whole person, body, mind, spirit. I know you have a great understanding, Amelia, of how the brain works and the mind works, and how we come into these, I guess you could call them trigger phases, where things could be just sailing along and then all of a sudden, boom, where'd that come from? We all experience that. I want you to speak to that, but I also want you to talk about your experience as a professional and maybe some of the grievances you have within your field, within your profession, that maybe some blind spots that other clinicians might have. And because Gina's coming at this from a whole different place of that lived experience, and having gone on that, that mill, if you will.
Right.
And so you have a different kind of more of a bird's eye perspective of that.
So I do, and I will say I have a personal experience so far as family history of suicidal ideation, as well as some of my clients who have contemplated and one who unfortunately completed.
Mm.
And so I've been in and around suicidality, I guess, since I was about 20, when I think back. And I have to say that from my perspective, there was still a fear response, still this, okay, we have to put the fire out as quickly as possible. Let's do the assessments. Let's get them the treatment they need. There was a very kind of rote way, still responsive, but I felt like there was a misstep in the overall opening of the conversation, like an inviting in of the topic. And I've chatted with Gina before that it sometimes reminds me of the way we used to talk about miscarriage and early pregnancy loss, how it
Mm.
was kind of like, ooh, don't mention you're pregnant until, the chances of miscarriage are reduced to 12 weeks because we don't want you to share that pain with everyone.
Mm. And I've
And
gone through
so,
4 miscarriages, so I understand that. I told
and,
everybody
and
at the beginning, then I had to go back and say, "Oh, never mind." But I don't regret that I did. I think that's what you're saying. Like, yeah.
I am. And I think maybe I'm making that connection because I had a similar experience where we shared and then we lost. And because people knew already, I'm talking about a miscarriage,
Right.
because people knew already, I was quite naturally thrown into this community of support. Whereas if I hadn't, there's this, do I share my pain and my need for support? But what if we started there always? What if it was more normalized that as a society, we first of all understand how common suicidal thoughts are? It is
Yeah.
far more common than
That
people say.
was a big wake up call for me.
Mhm.
I don't think I've
Absolutely.
ever met anyone that I was close to that was vulnerable with me, who said at one
Mhm.
time in their life or another they didn't contemplate.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have
Right.
no idea what the number is. And I just want
Right.
to, when I tell people on interviews, I'm a part of a couple different Facebook groups, suicide prevention groups. There's one that has 1.5 million people, members.
Mm.
Right.
Okay. And, I have a background in entertainment, working in big movies, with DC and all this stuff. And if we had a Facebook group with 1.5 million members, we would get a thumbs up from our, higher ups, because that's a lot of people to be on one Facebook group,
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
it to be people, members just trying to keep up with some kind of positive information.
Yeah.
This is 911 and, a public health epidemic, but this ideation is, we don't know. We can only
So
look
true.
at
Yeah,
suicide.
because we value like stoicism and, keeping our emotions at bay. That's like a societal value. It's considered strong. It's considered strength, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting.
I just want to interject one thing. I feel like suicidal ideation is really the last taboo right now, like the main one. In 1950, when they created AA, it was like alcoholism, and it
Mhm.
was shameful, but everybody was drinking, really. But I mean, but it was, but if you drink 3 bottles, like, yeah, You got to go to AA.
If your kids are bringing you a gin on the rocks in front of the recliner, then you got a problem.
You got a problem. That's
You know, they would drink at work and stuff and smoke, and you know, they were like, "What the heck? This is great." But anyway, maybe, you know, but it was considered shameful, just like divorce was and things like that. So we've kind of gotten out of those boxes a little bit for those things. This is the one that hasn't. This is the one
That's
that
very
really,
true.
Yes.
you know what I mean? And that's why that's why we're out here doing that, because it's like, and we need to have a very intelligent roundtable of people from every single different angle and saying how, you know, we're smart. What are some solutions to make people feel safe?
I think you're speaking to why institutions are crumbling right now, because they don't have those kind of roundtables in these setting. In every setting, I believe that they should have that kind of a roundtable.
Even
Someone
in
who
colleges.
represents every demographic, every, you know, trauma, everything. And
Yeah.
we all come together, and that's how we're going to solve all these problems.
And that's why we did this book, because, you know, it was a challenge. You have a wide thing to cover. You have a memoir story. We have Swedenborg Foundation, who is based in, you know, spiritual teachings of a beautiful mystic, Emanuel Swedenborg. And we have a clinician, you know what I mean? So
You
this is
covered
like,
all those bases. Yeah.
but when I came up with this idea years ago, I was like, I'm just a girl with a story and my spiritual teachings. And I knew it was not enough. I knew it was not enough. And so I had Dr. Kelley on my podcast, and something was like hitting me with a bat, almost spiritually. Ask her to write the book, ask her to write the book. And I just go, and she said yes. And I remember that day, like I could write it in my diary when she said yes. And I'm getting chills as I'm saying this. It was like, game on, we're doing this. And this was supposed to happen.
And it
And
puts all of that into perspective of what you had to live through and walk through, because there's one thing to, I look at like the three major traumas in my life, and had I not walked through those, I would not have the level of empathy or understanding. I could have read a book on it. I know that your book is powerful. I'm not diminishing that. I'm just saying, like, that gives street cred to your book to have Gina's story in there. Because it really just,
absolutely.
like, you need that relatability. So Dr. Kelley, continuing on what we were sharing about the clinicians and the other people in the professional healing professional, you know, in that whole field, what have you noticed that needs to be reformed, or what would you like to see happen so that we can experience healing in a more holistic way?
I think one of the things that I would really like to see happen is, instead of suicide assessment being a singular event, that it be seen as a form of treatment that happens throughout the entirety of treatment. So every single time I write a note at the bottom, we have like these progress notes we have to write. At the bottom, I have a check-in whether there is any SIHI, homicidal, suicidal, and then my homework for the week. And anyone who works for me, we do the same. Like, it has to be an ongoing conversation. And it has to be to the point where I am okay as a clinician to say the words suicide, death, kill. And I know this sounds dramatic, but
You
I need
can't
to.
say it currently?
No, you can. But what I'm seeing is that there's this belief that if you bring up suicide, it makes someone think of committing suicide. This
Okay.
is a societal belief.
Like the copycat thing. That's what, yeah.
Exactly. And so within the clinical community, there's a huge shift. People are opening their eyes and people are making better choices. But I think, like all the things I've seen in my 20 years, it's crazy to think the mind body connection I've seen in the last 20 years, where it started, where we literally called our clients consumers when I first started,
Mm,
to now client, someone that chooses me to be of service to them. So it's this shift that happens when you look at psychology in the field of therapy. It's really only a century old, if that. It's really not that old of a science, regardless of the fact that we've had a lot happening behind the scenes to kind of set the stage. So what I'm saying is opening up where we're normally checking in, we're regularly checking in. Hey, I'm noticing one of the 75 common warning signs. You're displaying this, this, and this. And 75 is an actual empirical number. I'm not just pulling that out of nowhere. There are 75 common symptoms or signs and risk factors that
wow.
research has dubbed. I can give you that amazing article about this. But checking in regularly, seeing suicide prevention as a form of treatment, not a form of reaction. And
Mm,
I think also understanding that just because someone is experiencing suicidal thoughts doesn't mean they need to be put inpatient, that
yeah.
instead, and in actuality, some research shows that being put inpatient can aggravate symptoms and make them worse depending on the
I
situation.
will tell you, my sister, one of my sisters who was hospitalized for that,
Mhm.
basically said that it exacerbated all of the symptoms it was a depressing environment.
Right. And it can, and there can be a loss of control, loss of employment, loss of relationship. And so there are times where it has to happen where you have to take those measures. Absolutely. But if you can get a group, a team effort. So when I have a client who has expressed suicidal ideation, either past or present, I immediately have them sign release of information forms for a family member, a medical provider, and someone else, if they so choose, that they give me permission to contact if at any point something is going awry. I need not be the only person on their team. Like, we need more people wrapping around someone. And finally, can we omit this idea of a call for help or a cry for help being something that needs to be ignored, diminished,
Yes,
or
please.
trivialized?
Yes, please. We're all
Y-
doing the dance here.
that's
Yes.
like saying I go outside, I break my leg, and I say, "Help, I need help." And we're like, "You're just asking for
That's just a
attention."
cry for help. You're just trying to get
It's like,
attention.
"Yeah, I need a splint, I need a cast, help."
Yeah, such a good point. I'm so glad you bring that up because that's
Mhm.
my MO with people.
Mhm.
If I
Can
have
I
an
ask you a
intuitive
question?
feeling that they're in that place, I'm
Mhm.
going to ask if they volunteer it. It's next level,
Mhm.
and I'm taking it seriously.
Dr. Kelly, is that something that you do, or is that sort of what most clinicians do when you set up that kind of care that you can contact others? Is that something that's just prepare, you just instilled that, or is that something
Mhm.
all clinicians is like a practice or a protocol?
I would say any effective clinician should be doing
Okay.
that. I mean, any that I have worked with who I respect, do those things. Now, I will say I've had some clinicians, I have 15 that work at my practice, and I've had some where don't realize that someone who's had past ideation also needs that. So
Mhm.
Mm.
I've kind of let them know, if this is something where there was self-harming in the past or if there was ideation in the past, it's still a good idea to at least have one safety person that you can have part of a plan.
Right.
So, is in your code of ethics or whatever for your practice,
Mhm.
is it out of line? I know, like, if somebody was coming to you and they were reporting abuse, you're like obligated ethically and
Mhm.
morally and with your license to report abuse. But if
Mhm.
it's self abuse, like, can you supersede their and go against their wishes if they don't want anyone to know they're having these thoughts? And can you contact
Mhm.
a trusted friend or family member, or is that above and beyond the bounds of what you're able to do?
That's a wonderful question because that's part of this conversation that Gina and I are discussing about realizing that suicidality is a spectrum. And so having the clinical awareness that if you're coming in and you're sharing thoughts, passive suicidality, or contemplation, yet you don't have the later stages of plan, intent, it is going to be of more benefit to regain and more sustain the trust with that relationship and maybe, "Hey, why don't we get a second appointment in this week?" Or, "Would you like me to contact your trusted person? Is there something we should dip into from your safety plan?" But it does supersede if they are actually in imminent danger in that moment. But I do think it's important to recognize the importance of consultation because if you're a clinician that's newer and you don't feel comfortable making that call, it's better to consult with someone who you have that HIPAA alignment with.
Yeah.
We might consult with each other because there is some level of unpredictability because we know suicidal thoughts can change from day to day too. So,
And I know you and I discussed earlier, I was on your podcast with Jeannie, but you and I had also discussed earlier that there's this fine line between, I want to say honoring privacy, but that's not quite it. I guess what I'm thinking of is if somebody is actually sitting across for you, they want that help, right? To
Mostly.
some degree, or are they compelled to be there? You know, I,
It
I just,
depends.
you
Yeah,
can
I mean, in
probably
this
assess.
setting, yeah, in this set, I'm so sorry. In this setting, it's more that they are requesting. But I mean, what if you're working with a teen or an adolescent,
Yeah.
or maybe someone that's court ordered, or someone who's in therapy, but they're kind of mentally, emotionally checked out, or they're feeling, they have their borders up, their boundaries. I actually want to ask Gina if you don't mind, because she was in therapy when she was feeling these things. So I was curious what her therapist, who is mentioned in the book, like how did he handle when you were having those thoughts? I'm
I
so
never told
curious.
him in my, because we're shooting a documentary right now and I interviewed him. And
Mm.
yeah, I never told him until I healed it. But because I was working with him on the thing that was like a wound that I was dealing with.
What if
Um,
he asked you? Do you think you would have told
Yeah.
him?
Would you have like
oh no, I
come
wouldn't
out?
have told him. No. I mean,
Mm.
I'm already in the entertainment industry, completely battling, thousands of people for my job, high standards, very pressure, being in like a pressure cooker type environment already.
Mhm.
To let that out would be like giving someone another thing that they could use against me to
Mm.
whatever they would, and it's true. They would use little imperfections in that business to say, oh, you're not good at grammar, you're this or that. And they wouldn't look at you as a whole person and what your talents were and accept you and mold you and let you be yourself, which is what I think we need to do with people in the world. They would find a weakness and they would just go in and take the knife. It was what they were taught to do. So it would be giving that whole other group another level of potential. So, and a huge fear about, if I do, does that mean I'm gonna go on a hold today? Like
So
huge.
I feel like
Yeah.
you're
That's why.
literally
Yeah. That's
yeah,
interesting.
she's literally confirming
Hmm.
why, if, let's say, because this was like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah,
That you
yeah,
guys were working together. If
yeah.
fast forward, you know what you know now, you have a therapist who like opens the conversation
Yes,
wide open and says, I am fully accepting of your suicidal thoughts if you have them.
yes,
Let's
Yeah.
have open dialogue. And she just totally proved, I have goosebumps. She just
yeah.
totally proved the point of why this needs to shift.
Yeah.
Dude,
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
got to the core of it because to me, I tell people it's like, when you have a tea kettle on and you don't take it off, it's just bubbling, it's at the surface, but you just
Mhm.
let it bubble over, it's gonna explode eventually.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You have to let the air out a little bit, but you have to.
Yeah.
But if you can't do that with the person that has the most information to help you,
Right.
Yeah.
th-
Such
you
a
know,
good point.
and it's great with the therapist because you can dump all of it and you don't feel like you're burdening them like if you were it's like your mother,
Mhm.
boyfriend, or your girlfriend, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't want to burden them with that. And then I'm already having issues with that relationship.
That
And
word is a big one, burden, because that came up a lot with
Yes.
my sister and in many people's minds. And this was validated through her letter that she was relieving herself, us, of the burden of her by taking her life.
Mm.
So, and that's, I think, where the sensitivity comes in. Highly sensitive people feel that.
Mhm.
They feel
Mhm.
empathically what others, but I've had this conversation with my children who are in their 20s. What burdens me is how you're feeling. That burdens me because I want you to live a powerful, loving, heart-led life. That
Mhm.
that burdens me, but not because you're a burden. It's my
Right.
love and concern for you. So having a therapist
Mhm.
communicate that, I think
Mhm.
that's something that I'm really grateful that we're talking about. Is there anything else, Dr. Kelly? I know we have to kind of wrap up, but is there anything else? I know you have this whole vision of like educating therapists about some of the spirituality pieces that could
Mhm.
be integrated into a treatment plan, but is there anything else that you would want to speak to as you kind of close out?
Well, I think that word burden that you just opened, I want to maybe briefly speak on that because I think it's a twofold solution because we need to, on one hand, change the perspective about suicidality, which we are discussing, like not making it something that people need to jump and stomp out, but instead something that people can open themselves up to being present around and to discuss. But then what that also does I think, allows people who are receiving the message to not have to be in a firefighter mode all the time, and to know that we can, as a whole community, work to save and help each other, not have it be where we take someone who's feeling these things and just push them out of society and lock them up. Like, we are, and that's a very dramatic way of putting it, but we are unburdening the singular person or the group or the family by saying, okay, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. And when we share this, it's not a burden, it's a shared human experience. And I think that
Yeah.
also speaks to the boundaries that family get to set. So if it's too much and it's too hard and it's too heavy because you have your own stuff, it's really great for you to have a therapist or for you to have someone for you to process the experiences of your family member who is struggling with these issues.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Having had the sister that took her life had suicidal ideation for many years before, and it was taxing emotionally on the family, especially my parents and her husband. This has been a really rich and enlightening conversation. I really appreciate both of you. Appreciate your bravery and vulnerability, your work, obviously the academic professional side of it, but also Gina, just your heart that you bring in and the soul of this work. So thank you both so much. And tell
Thank you for
people where they
having
can get
us.
your book and the name of it again.
Anywhere books are sold, you can
And those of you
get.
watching on YouTube, yeah, hold it up like so
Oh,
people can see
yes.
it.
Okay. Surviving Suicidal Ideation from Therapy to Spirituality and the Lived Experience. You can find it anywhere that books are sold. And my big ask is, if you want others who need this book to find it, please review it, because that's how
Mm,
people find books.
yes.
Without the reviews, it goes nowhere. So
Mm,
that is your way of serving the rest of humanity, honestly. A couple stars go a long way.
yes. Thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
both.
Thank you so much.